This series is the story of the new amphibious Arctic vehicle project named Bernard. Building on ideas, skills and questions raised during the Allen lifeboat conversion, as a team we will share all those moments needed to get Bernard up north, onto the ice and making himself useful. The mould of Bernard sits in wait, still, obstinate, robust, ever questioning, perhaps immortal, and risibly incomplete at the start of this episode. True loyalists to the channel will notice a tweak I've made to Bernard's tent. The sides flapped a bit in the wind, so I've added leashes in and out. Otherwise, the nose of Bernard continues to be faired and sanded. This is not to achieve a perfect cosmetic surface, but rather to ensure the form is correct and symmetrical, and there aren't divots that could trap air or distort the eventual carbon fibre fabric. This is unusual for a mould. We'll be making the parts direct from this pattern, which is in itself unusual when you'd normally make a female mould from a pattern and use that instead. Don't panic though, there's to be no gel coat. A release film and peel ply will cover the mould before the layup. This means the form matters, but the surface quality less so, and so I don't need to achieve a mirror polish. And it's not just the nose section for which there is a custom contoured shape. Bernard's rear end too, where the surface area for me to shape is lesser, but the radius is tighter and in need of more care and artistry. I'm using 40 and then 60 grit pads for fast removal. These are considered grinding pads, although do still leave a smoothish surface, not a rasped one. So I finally finished the 6th or the 7th fairing and sanding iterations. That was again on and off, on and off, on and off. It's taken ages. Anyway, it's now a really good surface, and so we're going to sweep it down. I will clean it with sugar soap, and we can get on to prepping it for the fiberglass skin. The broom end does a good service on this channel. It dusts off moulds, walls, me, all sorts. Although you don't need to be totally dust-free in this case, perhaps as you would before a paint job, dust certainly doesn't help resin adhesion, so I want to do a reasonable job cleaning the part. At some point, we're going to have to do a really intense vacuum cleaner-assisted eviction of dust from the whole tent, but that torture is for later. Cloths damped with sugar soap finish the job. It's a basic solvent-free cleaner which I gather is called something else over in the US. Good news is that our summer weather means the surface dries out in seconds. I mentioned before this chaotic mishmash of shades and marks makes it tough to spot errors or dinks, so I had to use my fingers to identify the final grooves or divots to fill. Also, the transition to the edge of the polypropylene sheets and MDF nose needed real care. I could have used a guide coat, but I would have gone through tons of it, and I found the eyes closed, hands running over method very effective. Finally, more than a fortnight late, I can skin the nose. Not as violent as it sounds. I'm placing a single layer of cheap plain weave glass fibre over the whole surface. This will add negligible thickness, but will strengthen and seal the nose and give us more robustness for use as a mould. Plain weave, not the more drapeable twill weave, as I wanted to test myself. I'll use twill weave fabric for the real part, but if I can conform plain weave to this shape at this stage, twill should be a breeze later on. I've also used special resin-compatible spray adhesives so the glass sticks obediently to the mould. I've only overlapped the edges by 5mm, the minimum that's realistic, so that there's less to sand back flush once cured. Again, a vacuum bag here would help, but the double thickness at an overlap would still need correcting afterwards. Okay, time for epoxy resin and some pigment, and then I'll just roller it over. Epoxy resin is overkill, but we get the best adhesion, low shrinkage, and it's only less than 1 litre needed. What I didn't overkill though was the black and white pigment mix, as you'll see. Okay, time to laminate. This is the satisfying fun I've been dreaming of for weeks through this delay-strewn stage. Closure, literally. I rollered the large sections for speed and brush stippled the joins as I was worried the roller would lift and ruin the edges. Also, you'll see why the satisfaction was not quite delivered as hoped. I've been stingy with that pigment, and we can see through to the filler. Never mind, I'll do a second thin coat later on after the final filling and sanding. Came back this morning to see how it's gone. There's one good thing, and that's that it's completely tack-free, and I guess it's the curing temperature that's managed to keep that from having that normal, I think what they call a B-cure tackiness to the outside, which you would get if you don't cover it in release film or peel ply. The negative is the fact that we do have a few little bubbles, and I did consolidate as carefully as I possibly could with a roller, but I think possibly might be down to the temperature that I've been curing it at. It's got pretty hot in here, so I'm going to have to there aren't that many of them, but I'm going to have to grind them back, fill them, and then I'll just do one epoxy layer with a better pigment in, and so we'll get a nice consistent grey then, because I was going to have to do that coating anyhow because I didn't put enough pigment in the resin the first time round, so it doesn't really matter that I'll need to do a little bit of a fill and then an epoxy layer over the top. Anyway, not perfect, but only maybe an hour or two extra work. And here I present the fruits of that hour or two of work. Sanding worked mostly with an aggressive 60 grit, but I used the mini grinder to speed up the smoothing of the linear ridges where the sheets of fabric met. we need to pay attention to the edges where fiberglass transitions to polypropylene. The aim is for as seamless as possible, so I over-resin the edges and can now go around and carefully smooth that edge with an old blunt and flat wheel on the mini grinder. I'll finish those joins off with flash tape, but the aim is a transition I can barely feel with a bare finger. And yes, I have indeed jerry-rigged a 12-volt lithium battery to the mini grinder battery pack to lengthen its life. When I get time, I may make a custom AC adapter from an old battery. I appreciate it may look a little bit of a mess mid-haircut, but after the trim, bubble busting and filling, optimism is once again restored aboard Team Bernard. So I mixed up another ½ kilo of epoxy resin and got to work. I did the rear section first, which is treated pretty much the same as the nose, of course smaller and more angular. I'm umming and ahhing about whether it's worth using foam core at all for this narrow rim. I may just bulk out the awkward angles and curves with more carbon and gift Bernard a reinforced coreless arse. And the nose once more. I put a real dollop of black and white pigment in there. Will it be enough? The answer is, sort of. And the warm temperature meant I had to hurry up with the resin in the pot. In fact, I was finishing the last square foot when I noticed my left hand getting very hot. The exothermic runaway had begun, and so I left the remnants in the pot to smoke away safely in the corner. We're left with a smart, shiny mould nose, which I hope you agree was worth the effort. A reminder that this is not the release surface. Epoxy makes a very poor release surface. There will be release film first, then peel ply on there, then the part, then the method of compression I've now decided upon, but won't unveil to you yet. Right, we didn't think it would ever happen, but the mould is complete. I put a lot more pigment in the resin this time, but it's still not completely opaque. I might possibly just do another quick run over with resin at some other point, but there's no enormous rush for that. Anyway, both ends are done. All the middle sections, of course, are now complete and in the right shape. Bernard's mould is actually a functional male pattern plug mould now, which is pretty cool. We can actually start doing something with it. And I don't have time. It is now, I need to get to train in about 20 minutes. So I won't have time to do all the vacuuming and getting rid of all that dust that's on top of it there. And also you can see there's a whole load of absolute mayhem going on under there. I'll clean the whole thing up and it will look super smart for the next episode, although the next episode may not be particularly on this subject because I want a little bit of variety. Anyhow, Domestic Alex will speak to you now. People of the channel, I will speak to you for a little bit now, and this is not the end of the episode. We have other things coming up after this. There's a new arrival, and also we're going to squish something with a force meter, which sounds extremely exciting. But I am going to try and intersperse this little message now. Normally I would do a diatribe as my outro, but I thought I would do it now to try and keep you guys going, and to listen to me have a chat about things which are hopefully interesting, intriguing. Those of you who have been channel patrons for a very long time, or long-term lurkers, I thought you might find it interesting to see where I see the channel going, improvements I'd like to make, things I'd like to sort of scale and grow as time goes on, because obviously we've been through this really quite big transitionary period since the end of the Alan playlist. I'm still trying to get an audience with Alan, hopefully over the next few months, to see how he's getting on. I'm still very much in the loop. Anyhow, what I thought I'd try and do is talk to you a little bit about memberships, because I've not done that really for months now, because in particular, because of the change of direction of the channel, I didn't want to push anything like that particularly strongly to begin with. I didn't think that would be appropriate. But of course, there are channel memberships, and there are people who very, very kindly maintain their support for me and my projects and what I'm trying to achieve here throughout. I've decided to try and rejig the whole way that those memberships work, because they were very Alan focused, and obviously they're kind of now not so relevant anymore. So you may be able to have a quick check on my website, of course, links in the description, and it will show that I've tried to simplify the way that Alex Hibbert Originals members page kind of looks. I've tried to take away some of the stuff that's no longer particularly relevant, and it will show that there are now some straightforward levels of, I guess, support that I would really appreciate any of you on the other side of this lens, this camera lens, considering. Of course, I really appreciate anyone who just checks in every week or so to watch my videos and to share amongst their friends via, I don't know, internet forums or other social media, to sort of spreads the word in general. That's super, super valuable. But you will obviously appreciate the fact that what we're doing here is expensive. I have to justify it alongside my other paid work, which is of course writing and speaking and endorsement deals and all that sort of stuff in my normal polar work, I guess you would call it. And so I do have to pay attention to whether the channel is a profit or a loss maker. And of course there are moments when I can kind of float it because it's important to me, but that won't be a long-term solution. And it does mean that it's really important for at least some of you, if it's possible, to support it as a higher or lower level. There will still be, as ever, a super affordable, barely like half a pint of beer kind of price membership, where you don't get a great deal in return, but it's the kind of thing where if, for instance, just a quarter of the people watching this video or other episodes, if just a quarter of people were to set up that sort of level of membership, even if it's just for a month, 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, it doesn't have to be multi years, it would make a cataclysmic difference to the scale and the decisions that I can make whilst I'm doing particularly design and build projects. So if you are able to, and I understand that if you do watch a lot of YouTube channels, you can't understandably support them all financially, and certainly I am not a paid subscriber of every single channel that I watch. I try and support as many as I possibly can, though. I do get that sometimes it is impossible, and the whole basis of YouTube is that it is free to play, and it's all an opt-in process, which I think is a nice way for it to be. Anyway, if any of you would like to see what's on offer, I've also rejigged how the perks work at the higher levels, because there was one thing that wasn't quite so popular with the higher level memberships before, which was the WhatsApp chat group. Generally, people wanted to contact me directly and have an email dialogue, and we never really got a fully functioning community going on that WhatsApp group. I will keep it open, and if people are interested in that, do let me know. It was quite fun to chat and share advanced news and updates and so on there, and answer questions in a more community sense. But people do seem to be keener on just contacting me directly via instant message or email and so on, and that's absolutely fine. Something that I'm going to try and add in is a new sort of benefit, which would be that at different levels there will be access to exclusive updates, which basically means you get an advanced preview of things that are coming up in the future, but also things that I will not be releasing at all to the main YouTube community, and that will be sort of like a monthly thing. And then at a slightly higher level, there'll be personalized videos going a step beyond even that. And so if you do want to really get an inside line into how I tick, how the whole thing works, how all the polar stuff works, the ideas for Project Bernard and so on, then that might be a level that might be interesting. So consider that if you possibly can. And those of you who are already members at whatever level, that will just stay exactly the same as it was before. You can let me know if you want to go up or down or anything like that. That's absolutely fine if there's a new perk on a different level that you find interesting. So that's going to be the way that things are going to be going on regarding the community. Also just mentioning the whole, you know what it is, you watch YouTube channels and you see all the ads for VPNs and various like mental health apps and all that sort of stuff. I get contacted by those companies a lot, and I say no. I have a policy for endorsements, whether it's big expedition, sponsorship deals, endorsements, and also for things like single episode sort of product placements or sponsored posts, that sort of stuff. It is important, and I know that it can hack off a community if you see too many of them and if they seem too tenuous, but they are important for keeping channels alive and keeping them growing. My policy will not change. My policy is that I have to either have been a genuine customer to a company for a significant period of time and actually like what they produce. For instance, I've actually been a genuine Squarespace customer for like 12 or 13 years, and I've got the literal receipts to prove it. They actually haven't contacted me yet, so if Squarespace do want to get in contact with me, I've seen them sponsoring other YouTubers, then you're absolutely welcome to do that. And there are other companies where I very happily do that sort of hopefully in context, sensible, not overbearing kind of promotional stuff during one of my videos. That's all well and good. And occasionally there'll be products that companies will pay me to feature in my videos. I have a policy with them, and it's meant that I have not signed contracts with probably nearly a dozen of them now because we could not agree these terms. I always say to them, I must be able to review this product honestly. If you have editorial control over my opinion about this product, we do not have a deal. And if you then have a penalty clause and you come after me because I refuse to lie and say that your product is fantastic when it's terrible, then I will defend myself robustly. That means that some of them haven't happened. So if you see me doing any of those sort of product reviews, and I think there'll be one coming up in a few weeks, I will be giving an honest review. I will obviously tick the box that says I'm getting paid for doing it, but I'm afraid that's just by the by. This is a platform where people need to be able to make a living, and occasionally it means you'll have to watch something that's sort of slightly commercial, but life goes on. Anyway, circling back to the whole membership thing, I'm particularly trying to ask people to go for that lowest level of membership if possible. I think I'm looking at, what was it, £3-4 or something like that a month, a really, really small amount. That, if it was done at scale, if a whole load of you decided just to have a crack for a few months and see how it goes, it would just transform things. I've just placed an order for a large amount of the best quality core foam for the Bernard build, and I mean it's a significant 4-figure sum. This stuff is not cheap. I'm not able to get freebies all the time. Sometimes I have been very kindly gifted stuff from companies, but there's a point at which you can't just keep on asking for free stuff, and so sometimes I have to simply pay the bill, and so channel support from the community will really go a long way to making that functional. Right, I think you can now go back to me sat on a step talking to you about something incredibly important, and meanwhile I will have a glass of this. Some of you were asking me why I'm not drinking red wine enough. It's really hot here at the moment and it's refreshing. I promise, have a glass of red wine in due course. Right, to the man on the step. Hello good people of the channel once again. I am extremely dusty because I've been doing lots of sanding, and I'm sat next to a large tub of epoxy resin. This is what my life has become. I thought though I would share just 3 little updates for you which are not necessarily connected to the rest of the video. Those of you will be on tenterhooks to find out how that demolding went from the cylinder of carbon fibre that I made as a potential prototype squishy wheel last time round, or maybe it was the episode before last, anyway, recently. And you'll see that I did manage to get it off the mould and only half destroyed the mould. Not too bad, I should be able to put it back together again. Anyway, the lamination was very good. It's squishy. And I actually have a machine over there, and I'll show you in a second how squishy it is, how many kilograms it requires to squish it. In fact, we'll do that now. I have my force meter out in force once again, and this time in pressing mode and not in pulling mode. Right, this wheel size needs to handle around 50 kilograms. That's 4 wheels on a 200 kilogram sledge. So, where are we now, and how much work do we need the spokes to help the cylinder out with? Just under 12 kilograms for just the cylinder. Pretty good. Spokes will add to the weight, so as few as possible. But too many, and the wheel won't squish enough to press down across a large surface area of snow, and so ruining the low ground pressure target I have. And then I'm going to work out, therefore, the number of kilograms it needs to be able to take. VoiceOver Alex has just done that, muppet. On its own, considering the fact it will be obviously sharing the load with 3 other wheels. And on Bernard, of course, it will be 6, but on the sledge prototype there's only going to be 4. And then I will work out how many spokes we're going to need. Composite spokes will be required to increase that weight loading to the correct level, because this, I suspect, will only be like 5-10 kilos to get to that sort of squishiness. But the good news is unidirectional carbon is magic stuff. It just will not break. When it's in the correct orientation, it's so springy with an amazing fatigue life. It's a really, really extra good material. Particularly when people are so negative about carbon in so many ways, when they say, oh, it's just going to snap in half. In this mode, it's actually fantastic stuff. Second thing, I wear gloves quite a lot because I don't want my hands to fall apart. And I've been getting, particularly in this really hot weather, I've just been getting a bit annoyed with normal work gloves. And I was experimenting with these. These are incredibly cheap. I think they're less than 30 pence a glove. And so I bought a huge box of them. These are just basic cotton gloves. And I know that they're not going to last many days each. I'll sort of see them as semi-disposable, but they breathe so much better. And yeah, they don't have the grippy bits on the inside or and so on. But for when I'm doing dusty work, lifting stuff, whatever, and I don't want to wear either nitrile gloves or Hi-Flex gloves. I think that's the brand that I use, Hi-Flex. These are actually really good, and it just means that my my hands don't get quite so beaten up as they would otherwise. Yeah, just give that a thought if you want to have sort of like a warm temperature or intermediate type of handling glove for stuff. The third thing is, you're probably wondering what the hell this is. Don't break it. This is like a sort of scored MDF, and I'm not going to tell you what it's for. I want you to guess. No, we're not making Bernard out of scored MDF, but this is going to be very, very important. I'll give you a hint. Temperature and bending. What do we think that's got to do with it? Let me know what you think in the comments. Oh, and good people of the channel who enthusiastically watch to the end, squeezing out every ounce of goodness, look what's on the way. I'm informed this is Bernard's custom gear motor, and this is it in the back of a FedEx truck in China. Unless these are AI fake pictures and I'm hundreds of pounds less well off. Hope not. I can unveil this to you in a few weeks. Bye.